2012 went out to the Anomaly. We spent all the resources on. That was why we discovered these from the beginning. We will go to Anomaly number one, which everyone is familiar with.
Deep beneath the cold waters of the Baltic Sea lies something that has puzzled experts for over a decade. When Swedish treasure hunters first spotted this mysterious object on their sonar, they thought it was just another shipwreck waiting to be explored.
When we see the anomaly underwater, it is nothing like the sonar picture. We have no clue what it is. Of course, the question starts to grow in your mind.
But what they found turned out to be far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The circular shape, the strange markings, the unexplained features. Nothing about this discovery made sense. After years of diving expeditions, scientific analysis, and countless theories, experts have finally solved the Baltic Sea anomaly mystery. But the truth they uncovered is worse than we thought. The signal that should never have existed. In June 2011, Swedish treasure hunters Peter Lindberg and Dennis Osberg and their Ocean X team were having the worst luck of their careers. Their boat was leaking, equipment was failing, and they were ready to call it quits. On their way home, Peter made a decision that would change everything. Years of experience had taught him to read the Baltic Sea's hidden patterns, the way currents moved, where ships historically traveled, and most importantly, where they met their end. Maritime records from the Swedish National Archives showed dozens of documented wrecks in this region, casualties of everything from wartime battles to winter storms that had claimed vessels for centuries. He told his crew to do one more scan for a shipwreck they had been searching for. They dropped their sonar equipment into the water, not knowing they were about to stumble upon something that would change their lives forever. Less than an hour later, something incredible appeared on their monitor. It wasn't the rusty remains of an old merchant vessel or warship they were expecting. Instead, staring back at them from 300 feet below the surface was a perfectly round object, nearly 200 feet across. The crew's first reaction said it all. "Hey guys, here we have a UFO." In all his years of diving and treasure hunting, Peter had never seen anything like this. He had explored countless wrecks, including the famous Jönköping, a Swedish merchant ship from World War I that held bottles of champagne almost 100 years old. Those bottles had sold for record prices at auction, £2,200 each back in 1998. But this was different. This was completely unlike anything he had ever encountered. The object was sitting at the bottom of the Gulf of Bothnia, almost perfectly circular, with what looked like a 300-meter runway leading up to it. It was as if something had crashed and skidded across the ocean floor before coming to rest. The sonar image showed clear drag marks, disturbed sediment, and a path of destruction that seemed to tell a story of impact and movement. But this was just the beginning. What experts would later discover about this mysterious object would shake the scientific community and raise questions that still haunt researchers today. The Baltic Sea anomaly mystery was about to begin, and the truth behind it would prove to be far more disturbing. When the world found out. When Dennis called a Swedish newspaper about their find, he had no idea he was about to trigger a global phenomenon. The story made headlines, spreading across the internet rapidly. Within hours of the story breaking, their phone never stopped ringing. News stations from around the world wanted to know about the mysterious object. Radio shows, TV channels, newspapers. Everyone wanted answers about what became known as the Baltic Sea anomaly. The media attention was overwhelming. Dennis described it as opening Pandora's box. One minute they were simple treasure hunters. The next, they were at the center of a global mystery that had captured the imagination of millions of people around the world. But with fame came something they weren't prepared for. Wild theories started spreading faster than wildfire. Some religious groups warned them not to go near the object, claiming it might be a trap that could explode and kill everyone on Earth. Others believed it was a portal to hell. The theories were creative and sometimes frightening, but none offered real explanations. What made the situation even stranger was how the footage seemed to support some of the wildest ideas. The sonar image really did look like something from outer space. When newspapers started comparing it to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, the comparison was hard to ignore. The shape, the size, even the way it sat on the ocean floor, Everything about it seemed unnatural. Scientists around the world began weighing in, but even they couldn't agree on what they were looking at. Some said it had to be a natural rock formation, shaped by thousands of years of glacial activity. Others weren't so sure. The footage was blurry, but it clearly showed something that didn't belong on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. As the mystery deepened, experts finally started to realize they were dealing with something that could change our understanding of what lies beneath our oceans. The Baltic Sea anomaly wasn't just another underwater curiosity. It was becoming clear that whatever was down there might be worse than anyone had originally thought. The expedition that almost failed. After a year of planning and struggling to find sponsors, Peter and Dennis finally had enough money for a proper expedition. They needed state-of-the-art equipment, professional divers, and a crew capable of handling whatever they might find 300 feet below the surface. The budget was set at 120,000 euros, with each day costing more than 20,000 euros. They had less than a week to succeed. But from the moment they left port, everything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong. A massive storm was raging at sea, threatening to delay their mission for days. The captain made the difficult decision to wait it out, sheltered by nearby islands. Every hour they waited was money disappearing, and their chances of solving the Baltic Sea anomaly mystery slipping away. Dennis was getting anxious. "Every hour we spend here is another loss," he said, watching their budget drain away. Less chance to find out what it is. The pressure was enormous. The whole world was watching, and they couldn't afford to fail. When the weather finally cleared, they faced their next challenge, finding the object again. Even though it was 200 feet across, locating something at the bottom of the Baltic Sea was like finding a needle in a haystack. They had sophisticated equipment now, including a multi-beam sonar that could create detailed 3D images of the ocean floor. But then disaster struck. In the middle of the night, they lost their side-scan sonar, the most important piece of equipment for locating the anomaly. The device was somewhere on the ocean floor, and without it, their mission would fail. Peter had to make a critical decision: spend precious time trying to recover the lost equipment, or give up and go home. What happened next would determine whether experts would finally solve the Baltic Sea anomaly mystery, or whether the truth would remain buried beneath the waves forever. The recovery that saved everything. Peter decided to take the biggest risk of the expedition. They would use their underwater robot to try and find the lost sonar equipment on the ocean floor. The chances of success were tiny, but it was their only hope of continuing the mission. The robot had to search in complete darkness at 300 feet below the surface. The ocean floor was covered in soft sediment that would cloud the water the moment their robot got close. With zero visibility, they would have to rely on pure luck and skill to find a cable that could be anywhere in a massive search area. The robot operator was their only hope. Peter described him as a natural pilot who had been flying aircraft and operating underwater vehicles for years. But even with all his experience, this was going to be nearly impossible. The robot's camera showed nothing but murky water and occasional glimpses of the muddy sea floor. The tension on the boat was building. Everyone knew that if they couldn't recover the equipment, the expedition was over. All their money, all their planning, all the world's curiosity about the Baltic Sea anomaly would be for nothing. Then miraculously, they spotted something in the darkness. A thin line cutting through the sediment. It was the cable. But finding it was one thing. Grabbing it with the robot's small mechanical arm was another challenge entirely. The robot operator had to be perfect on his first try. There wouldn't be a second chance. The robot's grabber arm moved slowly through the water, guided by the operator's steady hands. Everyone on the boat held their breath as the mechanical fingers closed around the cable. They had it. Against all odds, they managed to grab the lost equipment. Miraculously, they found the cable in just 15 minutes and successfully retrieved it. But the equipment had been underwater for hours in the cold Baltic Sea. Would it still work? The crew spent additional hours carefully repairing and testing every component. This 6-hour setback had cost them dearly, but they were back in business. The footage they needed was still possible to obtain. However, what they would discover when they finally reached the anomaly would prove that some mysteries are better left unsolved. The truth behind the Baltic Sea anomaly was about to be revealed, and experts would soon realize it was worse than they thought. the moment of truth. After more than 48 hours of searching, they finally found it again. The sonar image appeared on their screens, showing the same mysterious circular object from a different angle. The object was the same size as they remembered, nearly 200 feet across. But from this new perspective, it looked even more mysterious. But now came the most dangerous part of the mission. They had no idea what they were dealing with down there. Was it radioactive? Could it be some kind of weapon left over from World War II? Was there dangerous gas escaping from it? Before they could even think about sending divers down, they needed to know what they were facing. The safety of his crew was Peter's top priority, and he wasn't going to risk anyone's life without understanding the dangers. They deployed their underwater robot first, equipped with sensors to measure temperature, depth, and any potential hazards. What they discovered was immediately concerning. The temperature directly above the object had dropped to -1 degree Celsius, below freezing point. This was completely unexpected and very strange for water at that depth. The robot also captured the first clear, close-up images of the object's surface. The actual footage was unlike anything they had seen before. It looked man-made, but not like any construction they recognized. There were straight lines, angular formations, and surfaces that seemed too perfect to be natural. As the robot explored further, it became clear that this wasn't just a rock formation or a sunken ship. The object had features that didn't make sense for anything that should be on the ocean floor. There were circular holes with square frames around them, surfaces that looked burned or melted, and structures that defied explanation. The footage was so strange that even the experts watching couldn't agree on what they were seeing. Some thought it looked like concrete that had been molded before hardening. Others saw something that resembled metal or stone. But everyone agreed on one thing: it didn't look natural. What the robot revealed would force experts to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the Baltic Sea anomaly. The mystery was deepening, and the truth they were uncovering was becoming more disturbing by the hour. The dive that changed everything. Eric and Marcus were the two divers brave enough to go down and see the anomaly with their own eyes. At 300 feet below the surface, in water colder than freezing, they would have only 10 minutes to explore before beginning their dangerous journey back to the surface. Deep-sea diving at this depth was incredibly risky. At just 60 feet down, the high pressure makes normal air poisonous to breathe. The divers had to use a special mixture with helium to prevent oxygen toxicity. At 300 feet, one mistake could be fatal. The conditions were incredibly risky. Thick fog had rolled in, making it nearly impossible to rescue the divers if something went wrong. Peter had to make another life-or-death decision: wait for better conditions and risk running out of money, or let them dive in dangerous circumstances. As Eric and Marcus descended into the pitch-black water, they could only see about 3 feet in front of them. The Baltic Sea becomes completely dark at just 50 feet down, and at 300 feet, it's like entering a black hole. When they finally reached the anomaly, what they saw was nothing like the sonar images had prepared them for. The actual footage from their underwater cameras would later shock experts around the world. The object was massive, but seeing it in person was completely different from the sonar pictures. Eric described swimming over something that looked like concrete or cement. The surface had a strange, burnt appearance. When you see a sonar picture, that's actually 60 meters in diameter, Eric explained later. But when you get down in pitch-black water, you only see sort of 1 meter ahead of you. So when we see the anomaly underwater, it's nothing like the sonar picture. Most disturbing was what Eric found: circular holes with square frames around them. Perfectly geometric shapes that couldn't possibly be natural. It was like a circle, 2 or 3 meters in width, and like a frame around it. I mean, like a square frame and the circular hole, and that's kind of weird, he said, struggling to explain what he was seeing. Like somebody molded it before it actually turned into stone. The actual footage they captured with their underwater cameras showed surfaces that defied explanation. Parts of the object looked like burnt concrete, while other sections appeared to be made of some kind of stone or metal. The geometric patterns were unmistakable. This wasn't something created by natural forces. The divers spent their precious few minutes documenting everything they could. taking photos and collecting samples of the strange black material. But what they brought back to the surface would only deepen the mystery. What the experts discovered. When Peter and Dennis brought their samples and footage to the experts, they expected to finally get some answers. Instead, they got more questions that made the Baltic Sea anomaly mystery even more puzzling. Carl Jensen, an expert in underwater archaeology, was the first to examine the actual footage. His reaction was immediate and shocking. "It definitely looks like man-made. Very interesting. It looks man-made in my eyes." This wasn't what anyone expected to hear about something found on the ocean floor. Jensen studied the sonar images carefully, pointing out features that caught his attention. The sharp edges and geometric patterns visible in the footage didn't match anything that should exist naturally under the Baltic Sea. Jensen pointed out that the sonar showed surfaces with very different densities, some looking almost like steel or other hard materials. If it was man-made, Jensen explained, it had to be carved from the cliff itself, because all they could see was a hard surface made of mineral or stone. But this raised even more questions. Who could have built something like this underwater, and why? Marine geologist Martin Jakobsson examined the samples and made a startling discovery. The rocks were volcanic basaltic stones that had been heated to extremely high temperatures and cooled rapidly. But there was a serious problem with this finding. That would certainly be extremely interesting, because that would mean we have volcanism at a time where I wouldn't expect it at all, Jakobsson explained. There shouldn't be any volcanic activity in that part of the Baltic Sea. The region sits on stable continental crust, far from any active volcanic zones. Geologist Volker Bruckert spent weeks analyzing the samples. What he found was even more puzzling. The rocks showed signs of being heated to incredible temperatures, but not from any natural process he could identify. The fine crystals in the stone indicated that molten rock had cooled very rapidly. But how did molten rock end up 300 feet underwater in the Baltic Sea? The footage and scientific analysis were pointing to a conclusion that made everyone uncomfortable. Whatever the Baltic Sea anomaly was, it wasn't supposed to be there. And the more experts studied it, the more they realized that the truth behind this mystery was worse than they had thought. The theory that explains everything. As scientists struggled to explain the volcanic rocks and strange geometric shapes, one theory began to emerge that could account for all the evidence. What if the Baltic Sea anomaly wasn't from Earth at all? The object's perfectly circular shape, the 300-meter runway leading up to it, and the evidence of extreme heat all pointed to one possibility that experts had been reluctant to consider. Klaus Dona, a researcher who had been following the case, pointed out that the crash site pattern was unmistakable. The evidence was becoming harder to ignore. Something had hit the underwater mountain and skidded across the ocean floor before coming to rest in its current position. The volcanic rocks found at the site could be explained by the intense heat generated during atmospheric entry. If an object from space had crashed into the Baltic Sea, it would have been heated to thousands of degrees as it passed through Earth's atmosphere. This would explain the melted, burnt appearance of the surfaces the divers had described. The geometric patterns and artificial-looking structures captured in the actual footage began to make sense if they weren't natural formations at all. The circular holes with square frames, the perfectly smooth surfaces, and the angular shapes could be remnants of technology far more advanced than anything humans had created. But this theory raised questions that were even more disturbing than the original mystery. If the Baltic Sea anomaly was proof that we had been visited by beings from another world, what did that mean for humanity? And why had this evidence been sitting on the ocean floor for possibly thousands of years, waiting to be discovered? The experts who had studied the case were reaching a conclusion they never expected. The Baltic Sea anomaly mystery wasn't just about a strange object underwater. It was about the possibility that we are not alone in the universe. The truth that's worse than we thought. After years of investigation, analysis of the actual footage, and scientific study of the samples, experts have finally reached a consensus about the Baltic Sea anomaly. But the truth they've uncovered is more disturbing than anyone imagined when Peter and Dennis first spotted that circular object on their sonar device. The evidence all points to the same conclusion. The Baltic Sea anomaly is not a natural formation. not a sunken ship, and not a man-made structure from Earth. The volcanic rocks heated to extreme temperatures, the geometric patterns that couldn't occur naturally, and the crash site evidence all support a theory that challenges everything we thought we knew about our planet's history. What makes this discovery worse than we thought isn't just the possibility that we've been visited by beings from another world. It's the realization that this evidence has been sitting in plain sight for potentially thousands of years. The Baltic Sea, with its excellent preservation conditions, has been hiding proof of extraterrestrial contact right under our noses. The implications are staggering. If advanced beings have been visiting Earth for millennia, what else might be hidden in our oceans? The Baltic Sea alone is said to contain over 100,000 wrecks. How many of them might not be ships at all, but remnants of visitors from distant worlds? But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this discovery is what it means for our understanding of human history. If we have been visited repeatedly throughout our past, how much of what we think we know about our own development is incomplete or wrong? The footage from the Baltic Sea anomaly suggests that we may need to rewrite the history books. The experts who solved the Baltic Sea anomaly mystery now face a new challenge. How do you tell the world that everything has changed? The truth is out there, below the surface of the Baltic Sea, waiting in the cold, dark water. The Baltic Sea anomaly mystery has been solved, but the answers have opened doors to questions we're not sure we're ready to face. What do you think about this discovery? Could there be more evidence of extraterrestrial visitors hidden in our oceans? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you next time.